Something I learned very, very early is if you have beef with everybody, you're going to end up alone and you're going to end up beat up. If you have a problem with John, with Jack, with Patrick, with Abdullah, with Makungo, you're going to end up beat up. How? Because Jack, Patrick, Makungo, and Musa will come together against you. And this is valid even if you're strong. So don't believe in your strength. Say, I'm stronger than John, Jack, Vandu, Mukundo, and I'll beat them up. Well, if Mukundo, John, Jack, Vadri comes together against you, they're probably going to beat you up. Yeah, so it also doesn't make sense that you as a person, you have issues with everybody. Well, what's wrong with you? How come you have issues with everybody? Well, fellas, Ibrahim Traore is landed in Russia. Congratulations. Pika Makofi, yeah. He has landed in Russia. He has landed in Moscow. Very interesting way. He's in Russia to commemorate the Soviet Victory Day, which is a celebration in World War II. So clearly showing his side, showing his stance, showing his loyalty to Vladimir Putin. That's interesting because at this very time, Putin needs allies and friends, because he's been pushed to the side by everybody, especially when you talk about everybody, you're talking about Europeans, because they think, when there's war in Europe, they say it's world war, right? But when there's war in Africa, they say it's some tribal war, right? When the Europeans fought each other twice, they called it world war. Africans were not involved. There was no war in Congo. There was no war in many other places, Zambia. There was no war, but they call it world war. So basically, at this very specific time where Putin is pushing back against a lot of countries, he needs allies. He needs people to show him loyalty. And I'm sure you will never forget. It takes guts and courage for an African president to jump in his aeroplane and go support somebody the West doesn't like. It takes guts. That's why you see many coward presidents here that couldn't even speak a thing. Only South Africa had the courage to go and take the country you don't name to court for things happening in Palestine. Many African cowards countries, they folded. Some because they believe in the Bible. They think, whatever is in the Bible is what. Yeah, anyway. So it takes a level of courage and a level of guts. This man, 37 years old, 37 years old only. That shows you again that wisdom has absolutely nothing to do with age. The celebration on May 9th commemorating Soviet Union World War II. Now, this is interesting because I know a lot of people don't talk about this. Russia played a major role during world wars, especially World War II. Major role. Russia played a big role to end the war. I know many people just praise America and Britain. They think it's because of the Allies that the war ended. No. Russia played a massive role on the east side of the front. In matter of fact, Germans entered Russia trying to conquer Russia, big chunk of it. Well, they made a big mistake because they went into Russia during winter. Imagine, windy winter, extremely cold. They were beat by the winter before they were beat by the Russians. Well, the Russians are used to it. I mean, you're born into it. You've lived in the cold the whole life. You know what it is. You adjust to it. And the Russians played a major role. But unfortunately, when they started the war in Ukraine, many European countries stopped, acknowledging the input of the Russians. In many European countries, they actually removed statues of Russian soldiers who fought and liberated their countries. You hear that? Some European nations that were liberated by Russia during World War II removed the statue of Russian soldiers that they put there for many, many years, celebrating those Russian soldiers that fought for them just because Putin decided to have a war in Ukraine. I mean, if Putin has a war in Ukraine, does that implicate those Russians that fought for you? You forget very quickly, don't you? I mean, you can still push Putin back whilst keeping the memories of the people that help you. These are two different entities. Now, Ibrahim Traore in Russia, he also had a meeting with somebody very interesting. He met with Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro in Moscow. Pika Makofi. Pika Makofi. Pika Makofi. That Pika Makofi means, clap your hand. Let's clap your hand. Yeah, clap in my hand in Swahili. Swahili is the most spoken language in Africa, just so you know. All these countries here all speak Swahili. Beautiful language. Congo, Burundi, Uganda, Rwanda, Tanzania, Kenya, all these countries speak Swahili. Clearly, very different type of, not different, but different twang, different whatever. But they can understand each other. They have a conversation, no doubt. It's a little bit like Botswana people of Botswana and Botswana people of South Africa, vice versa. Something very similar. Anyway, you learn Swahili. If you learn Swahili, we probably wouldn't be speaking in English. Let's continue. So Traore is meeting Nicolas Maduro in Moscow. Very interesting. Burkina Faso's president. But before we get to that, there's another thing. They say Traore is in Russia with his gun. He traveled with his gun. Usually, that is out of policy. You don't do that. You cannot hold your gun amongst head of state. You don't do that. But for some reason, he's been given the free pass everywhere he's been. I don't know if people just like him or he's just trustworthy, but he's always with his gun. Apparently, or allegedly, he has traveled with his gun again. And that's very interesting. Traore has traveled with a flight freighted by Vladimir Putin himself. So the Russians have sent a flight, an aeroplane to pick him up from Burkina Faso and fly him over back to Russia. And he didn't fly by himself. There was fighter jet flying next to him. How amazing is that? Now, this is alleged, it's not confirmed yet, but we will get the confirmation, trust me. But if this is truth, I think this shows you the level of consideration and respect that Putin places on this man, who's 37 years old. It's amazing. I think it just shows how much, look, it takes gut, like I say, it takes gut for an African president to stand strong against the West. Trump has not spoken against Traore yet, have you noticed? Because they're looking at him. And Traore has not gone to any big institution to beg for money like most African presidents do. Just a bunch of beggars with big cars. They just beg. And this man has not begged. Instead of begging, he has asked his people. He said, before we beg, let's all just put a percentage of what we earn into a basket. Before we beg, let's just contribute from our own salary into a common basket and let's see what we get. That is how he got money to buy weapons to go fight terrorists. That is how he got money to buy all these stuff you see here, all these trucks to give the soldiers to go fight. That's how he got money to build hospitals. That's how he got money to build farms and tomato plants. That's how he got money to build roads. He didn't go to IMF or World Bank like most of these African countries. Shit all go ask. They just go beg. Nigeria beg, Kenya beg, Congo beg. All these countries, they just beg. They're in debt. You know, like in Kenya, they beg so much money, they don't have money anymore. Now the government of Ruto wants to impose tax on people so they can pay the debt they mismanaged. How crazy is that? Okay, they went to beg money. They misused the money. Well, not Ruto directly, but people around him surely. Okay? They misuse the money, corruption, misuse and stuff like that. But then what do they want? They want to tax the people. They want you to pay tax on bread, tax on period pad. Yeah, imagine a tax on period pad. Tax on cancer treatment. That's why the people of Kenya went in the street and say, no, we're not going to accept this. They thought they were going to shut them down. But they couldn't because the Kenyans are very resilient. And as I said, let's get back to Burkina Faso. So, the president flew with the freight by Russia. Apparently, the same for the Zimbabwean president, Mnangagwa. They sent him an aeroplane. And very, very beautiful if this is what Putin has done. It's amazing. Burkina Faso president, Zimbabwean president Mnangagwa was attending, Iranian president, Mongolian president, Sassou Nguesso of Congo Brazzaville is attending, Xi Jinping is attending, Venezuela president is attending. So let's talk about the Venezuelan president. Now the Venezuela's president and Ibrahim Traore had a meeting. Very interesting. The meeting focused on advancing strategic cooperation between Burkina Faso and Venezuela in economic, political, energy sector, aiming to strengthen multilateral ties and anti-imperialism solidarity. Anti-imperialism or anti-imperialism, depending on how you like to pronounce it. These are countries that are standing very strong against imperialism. Maduro. Who's Maduro?
si están dispuestos al gobierno de Estados Unidos a respetar la soberanía de Venezuela, a dejar de amenazar a Venezuela, podemos retomar el diálogo.
Well, Maduro is not liked very much by the Americans. They don't like him. They don't like his country either. They didn't even like his predecessor. Why doesn't Maduro and America like each other? Well, because they have different type of policy. America is an open market. It's capitalist. Venezuela is not capitalist anymore. It's socialist. They stopped liking each other when Venezuela decided to stop being capitalist and become socialist. What is the difference between capitalism and socialism? Well, it's very simple in very stupid English, because not everybody has a degree here. Is capitalist is where you can be rich get richer, poor be poorer. That's what it is. Socially is ideally a place where everybody will have the same portion of food. Let me explain. Imagine you have a pizza with 12 pieces and you are 12 people sitting around the pizza, and one person says, I'm taking 10 pieces of pizza, and you 10 people will share 2 pieces of pizza. That is capitalist for you. Look at Jeff Bezos, rich guy, became richer during COVID. He made a lot of money, became multi-billionaire during COVID alone. Crazy stuff. Look at the companies that make the vax. How much money they made. While they were making money, some people were in the houses in poverty, not having food, no bread. That's capitalist society. Even though the CEO of the company that does this refused to inject himself that thing, but he was injecting other people. Now let's get to socialist. Socialism, ideally, you see the same piece of pizza with 12 pieces. You have 12 people sitting around it. In socialism, what's going to happen is everybody takes one piece of pizza, one slice. That is ideally socialism. Now, Maduro wants a socialist country. Trump lives in a capitalist country. What happened is Venezuela changed its system from capitalist to socialist. When they did that, America hated it. They didn't want it. Matter of fact, Maduro's predecessor, Hugo Chavez, called America devil, imperialist.
The president of the United States, the gentleman to whom I refer as the devil, came here talking as if he owned the world. Truly, as the owner of the world. I think we could call a psychiatrist to analyze yesterday's statement made by the President of the United States. As the spokesman of imperialism, he came to share his nostrums.
Now, recently, Donald Trump announced on March 24, 2025, they would impose a 25% tariff on all imports from any country that purchases oil and gas from Venezuela. Yeah, so any country that buys oil or gas from Venezuela will get sanctioned and get 25% on everything they sell to America. Venezuela has a lot of oil and gas. It's a rich country. But America has told any country in the world, all of the countries that follow America, not to buy anything from Venezuela, because Venezuela refused to be an open market. They want to prioritize the good of their people and serve their own people. Does that sound very similar to what Traore is doing? So the Venezuela president and Traore have sat down to have a discussion. Now, this is not new from America. America sanctioned Cuba. Why? Because Cuba wanted to prioritize Cubans first. They took some of the companies that were owned by Americans in Cuba because Cuba wanted to prioritize Cuba. They nationalized many of the companies. America didn't like that. America sanctioned Cuba. America asked anybody that's going to trade with Cuba to be careful because they're going to be sanctioned too. But in the meantime, America still have a military base in Cuba, a big chunk of land. Cuba said to them, leave our country. They say, we're not leaving because we're strong. If you open your mouth, we're going to break your jaw because we're America. But we're the good people, you're the bad people. Let me know how you feel about this, fellas. It was a great pleasure. They said Moscow sent an aeroplane to go pick up a few African presidents, sent them jet fighters as well. That is not confirmed. It is alleged. We're still trying to get the confirmation about that. I'll be the first to let you know about that if that's true. But if it is true, it is very honorable of him. I think in this moment that is very difficult for him, he needs friends and partners. And this is a great way to show it. The other question is, will Zelensky dare do something at this very time? As he promised, he doesn't promise security for anybody, any president that's going to be in Moscow for the celebration. God bless.